You know those nights when you wake up to a phone call and your gut already knows something's wrong? Yeah, this was one of those. It was 3:37 a.m. when my world started cracking, and I didn't even realize it yet. My wife was next to me when we went to bed. But when that phone rang, she wasn't there anymore. And that was just the beginning. I thought I was rushing to the hospital to support my injured wife. Turns out, I was heading straight into the wreckage of my marriage. I don't know why I remember the exact time. Maybe because it was the moment everything started falling apart. 3:37 a.m. The phone rang loud, shrill, way too late for anyone to be calling with good news. I reached for it blindly, hoping it was hers and she'd silence it. Only she wasn't in bed. My hand hit empty sheets. "Diana," I called out, half asleep, already uneasy. No answer. I rubbed my face and looked at the caller ID. Unknown number. "Hello." My voice cracked. "Is this Mr. Miller?" The voice asked. Female. Calm but clinical. "Yeah. This is Northridge Medical. Your wife's been in an accident. We need you to come right away." I remember sitting there for a full 5 seconds, trying to understand the words. Not my daughter. Not my mom. My wife. Diana. The woman I kissed goodnight just hours ago. I got up in a daze, went upstairs to wake our daughter. Dallas. She was still living at home halfway through college. I always thought it was smart, save money, focus on school. Diana loved having her around. "Dal," I said, nudging her shoulder. "Nothing." "Dallas." I had to say it 3 times before she finally stirred. She blinked at me, confused. "What's wrong?" "Your mom's in the hospital. We need to go. Now." She didn't ask much, just got dressed in silence. The ride to the ER was quiet too. Just the sound of tires and my heart beating louder than it should have been. They brought us straight to Diana's room. The sight of her was rough. Bandages. IVs. Unconscious. She looked small in that bed. Fragile. Like a stranger wearing my wife's face. A nurse gave me paperwork to fill out. Even in the middle of grief and confusion, the hospital never forgets its bureaucracy. Dallas sat beside her, holding her hand. I filled out form after form, just trying to stay busy. Then the cops showed up. "Mr. Miller?" the officer asked. "I'm Stanton. This is Officer Reyes. We were first on the scene." "What happened?" I asked. "Did someone hit her?" The officer paused. "It was a single vehicle collision. No skid marks. No brake lights. Witnesses say the car sped up before hitting a tree." I just stared at them. "You're saying she did it on purpose?" "That's one possibility," the officer replied carefully. "We won't know until we inspect the car. Or talk to your wife." Dallas looked at me. I looked at the floor. There were no signs. No fights. No crying spells. We went to bed like always. Everything was fine. Or so I thought. We stayed there for hours. I don't remember sleeping. I just sat by her bed until they kicked us out. Over the next few days, I kept telling myself it was just an accident. A misjudgment. Maybe she fell asleep. Maybe the car malfunctioned. But there was something gnawing at me. Something in how the cops looked at me. Like they knew more than they were saying. For days later, she opened her eyes. I was there when it happened. I stood up, reached for her hand, whispered, "You're okay. You're gonna be okay." Then a nurse walked in, saw the monitors. She looked at Diana, then at me. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. Your wife has asked not to see you." I blinked. "What? She doesn't want you? Or your daughter in the room?" I froze. "She's my wife. I understand. But her wishes come first." I didn't believe it. I tried to push past the nurse. "Diana? What's going on? Talk to me." Security was called. I was told to wait outside or leave the hospital. Dallas showed up 45 minutes later. I was sitting in the hallway, stunned. "What's going on?" she asked. "Why are you out here?" I told her. She paused. "I mean, I get why she wouldn't want you in there," she muttered. I turned to her slowly. "What does that mean?" She shrugged. "It's complicated." And in that moment I knew. Something was broken. Not because of the crash. because it had already been breaking for a long, long time, and I just hadn't seen it. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, unanswered questions, and silence. Diana stayed conscious, but not a word from her. Not to me, not to Dallas. They wouldn't even let us in. The doctors said she was stable, that she'd make a full recovery. Great. But the real injury wasn't the one on her body. It was whatever happened between us before that crash. Whatever it was, I wasn't part of it. On Wednesday morning, a nurse pulled me aside. "Your wife has started communicating," she said, "with a whiteboard." I didn't even know how to process that. "Okay. So can I see her?" The nurse hesitated. "That's what I wanted to tell you." Her first message was a request. She doesn't want any visitors. Specifically, she mentioned you and your daughter. My heart stopped. "Why?" I asked. "What did I do?" "I can't answer that, Mr. Miller. I'm just relaying her wishes." Dallas showed up a little later, holding coffee and acting like she didn't just sleep through the last 4 days. I told her what the nurse said. She rolled her eyes. "Figures," she muttered. "Honestly, Mom's been weird for a while." That hit me sideways. "You knew something?" She took a long sip of coffee. "I didn't say that." I stared at her. "Dallas, I don't want to talk about it," she said. "Not here." But that was enough. Something was going on. And my own daughter knew more than she was letting on. That night I went home alone. Our house felt like a museum to a life I thought I understood. Her shoes by the door. Her robe on the hook. Her half-used lotion on the counter. All normal. All untouched. All lies? I stood in our bedroom and realized I didn't know my own wife anymore. And maybe she didn't know me either. By Friday, the hospital allowed her to speak again. The tubes were out, her voice was coming back. But the ban still stood. I wasn't allowed in. That's when I got the call from a psychiatrist on staff. A Dr. Lassiter. She said Diana had agreed to speak to someone for mental evaluation. Routine, she called it. But I knew what it really was. They were trying to figure out if it was a suicide attempt, and why her husband wasn't on the visitor list. Later that night, Dr. Lassiter called me directly. Said she'd be speaking to Diana again in the morning. Said she hoped to get some answers. She sounded professional but kind, reassuring in a way I hadn't heard in days. I hung up and sat in the kitchen, just staring at the clock. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then I opened the bottom drawer of our filing cabinet. The one she thought I never looked in. And there it was, a receipt from a hardware store. In a part of town she never went. 2 coffee mugs. Matching. Bought during one of the weekends I was out of town for work. I don't know why that small detail hit so hard. But it did. Because she never drank coffee. The next morning, Dr. Lassiter returned to Diana's room. And later that day she called me again. "She's not ready to talk to you," she said. "But she's talking. That's something." I asked her one question. Did she do it on purpose? There was a pause. "She didn't say those words," the doctor said. "But I think she's starting to admit something to herself." The dam finally broke later that week. Diana's doctor called and said she'd changed her visitation list. But not to allow me in. To permanently remove both me and Dallas from the approved list. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the last piece finally clicked. You don't shut out the people who love you unless you know exactly what you did. The next time I saw her was through a window. I stood in the hallway watching through the glass. She was smiling, writing something on that whiteboard, not a trace of guilt on her face. Whatever broke her that night, it wasn't shame. She was hiding something, and I was going to find out what it was. You know what's worse than being shut out? Being shut out by your own wife, while your daughter acts like she's more confused about you than about her mother. The weekend after Diana banned us, I finally cornered Dallas in the kitchen. She was making toast like it was any other Saturday morning. I leaned against the counter. "You want to tell me what's going on now?" She didn't look up. "What do you mean?" "Dallas, I'm not stupid. You knew something before this crash. You've been holding it in." She stared at the toaster. "I didn't think it would go this far." What wouldn't? She sighed, real slow. I thought she was just blowing off steam. I didn't think it would wreck everything. That was the moment I knew. Knew it in my bones, even before the words came out. Is she seeing someone? Silence. Then finally a small nod. I don't know how long, she said. But it's been a while. That one hit like a truck. Not because I didn't suspect it deep down, but because my daughter knew. And she didn't tell me. I asked her who. She hesitated, then said the name. Bill. I blinked. Wait, Bill? Brad's dad? Your boyfriend's father. She nodded again, looking ashamed. Are you telling me your mother has been sleeping with the father of your boyfriend? And you knew? I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, letting the numbness take over. My wife was cheating on me, with a man we knew through our daughter, and Dallas had helped keep it quiet. She tried to explain it, talking fast like that would make it hurt less. She was lonely. You weren't the same after the accident. I thought, maybe it would pass. Dallas. I couldn't even stand up straight without pain for months. I know. It was messed up. I just didn't want to make it worse. That night I didn't sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how long the woman next to me had been living a double life. Wondering if the vows we made ever meant anything to her after I got hurt. My mind kept going back to that damn whiteboard. She didn't even have the guts to tell me with her voice. Just a dry erase marker and a nurse as messenger. Monday morning, I called the hospital and asked to speak to Dr. Lassiter. I told her what I knew. She listened quietly, then said, "Thank you for telling me. This adds some context to what she shared." "What did she say?" I asked. The line was quiet for a beat. She said, "He didn't mind." That's how Diana explained it. Like I gave her permission. Like I was okay with being replaced in our marriage because I had been injured. Later that day, Diana had another session with Dr. Lassiter. And finally, the truth came out. She told the doctor about Bill. About how it started a few months after my injury. About how I wasn't present anymore. She blamed the lack of intimacy, the silence, the frustration. But she never once blamed herself. It was survival, she said. Like sleeping with another man was the logical next step. Like I left her no choice. And the kicker? Bill wasn't some random affair. Dallas suggested him. According to what Diana told the doctor, my daughter actually brought up the idea. Apparently, she thought Bill and her mom could help each other. Two lonely people. Two grieving adults. What a sweet little disaster. When I heard all that, something inside me broke. Not from rage. Not from jealousy. From grief. I grieved for the man I used to be. The man who trusted his wife. Who believed in his family. Who thought silence meant peace, not decay. And I knew then, this wasn't something we could talk out. This wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal on every level. And yet, I still wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. Because part of me still wanted to believe it was salvageable. Part of me still wanted to fix what was broken. But that part of me was about to get crushed. I don't know what kind of man keeps trying to save a marriage after this kind of betrayal. Maybe someone in denial. Maybe someone desperate. Or maybe just a guy who made a promise and didn't know how to break it. Whatever I was, I still thought we could fix it. I told myself, when she gets discharged, we'll talk. We'll go to counseling. We'll rebuild. We'll put our daughter first. But Diana had other plans. When she finally came home, it was like nothing happened. She walked through the door with a bag of prescriptions and a new purse. I asked how she was feeling. She shrugged and said, "Better, tired," then walked straight into the bedroom. No hug, no apology, no explanation. I tried to let it slide, told myself she needed space. But the next day, she left to run errands. 3 hours later, she came back smelling like a man's cologne and with no groceries in the car. That was it. I waited until Dallas wasn't home, sat Diana down at the kitchen table, and told her we needed to talk. She didn't even look surprised. "Let me guess," she said. "You found out about Bill." I nodded. "You could have told me. Before the crash." Before everything. Her voice was flat. And what would you have done? Yelled? Left? You couldn't even touch me, Martin. What was I supposed to do? Stay celibate forever. That hit hard. And she knew it. I would have stayed faithful, I said. Because that's what we promised each other. She rolled her eyes. You think this is black and white. It's not. You shut down after the accident. You weren't you anymore. I was trying to survive. I snapped. And so was I, she shot back. I leaned forward. Are you still seeing him? She didn't answer. Just looked away. That was my answer. So I gave her one last offer. You end it. With him. Today. We get counseling. We start over. Or I call a divorce lawyer on Monday. She laughed. Not because it was funny. Because she didn't take me seriously. You're not going to divorce me, she said. You're just angry. You'll get over it. I stood up slowly. We'll see. That weekend, I started sleeping in the guest room. Dallas didn't ask questions, but I knew she noticed. Every now and then, she'd knock on my door, say goodnight in that same soft voice she used when she was a kid. Part of me hated her for what she did. Part of me still saw my daughter. And part of me knew. She was stuck between two people who both failed her. On Monday, I called a lawyer. Told him everything. He asked if I had proof of the affair. I said yes. Texts, receipts, hospital records, even witness testimony, my own daughter. He said we had a strong case, especially with how Diana handled the accident. But be ready, he warned. People like her, they don't go quietly. He was right. When I handed her the divorce papers 2 weeks later, she lost it. Are you serious? She yelled. You're going to ruin our family over one mistake? One ongoing mistake, I said. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't numb. I was done. That night, Dallas knocked on my door again. Are you really going through with it? She asked. Yeah, I said. I have to. She nodded slowly. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, I think you're doing the right thing. I didn't ask her what changed, but I saw it in her face. She finally realized the truth. Her mom didn't just cheat on me. She broke something in all of us. Filing for divorce felt like pulling the plug on a life I'd spent 2 decades building. But once I did it, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't begging. I wasn't silently hoping she'd remember the man she married. I was done hoping. Of course, Diana didn't go quietly. The first thing she did? Lawyered up. Not just any lawyer, a bulldog. The kind who doesn't wear socks with his loafers and talks like he's already winning before he knows what the case is. They tried everything. Claimed I was unstable. That my mental state after the accident made me unfit for decision-making. Even brought up the crash, called it a suicidal event. As if that somehow meant she should get the house, the car, and spousal support on top of it. I was ready for it, though. I'd started therapy the same week I filed. Made sure there was a paper trail. Got evaluations from a licensed psychologist. Regular check-ins. Clear documentation that I wasn't a risk to myself or anyone else. I showed up to court clean, calm, and prepared. Diana showed up dramatic, bitter, and alone. Turns out Bill didn't stick around. Guess it's easy to play house when your boyfriend's married to someone else. Not so easy when he's expected to stick around and share the bills. He ghosted her 2 months after I moved out. She never saw it coming. The divorce dragged on for 6 more months. Dallas bounced between us like a ping-pong ball. Sometimes she stayed with her mom. Sometimes with me. She said it was to keep things balanced. I think she was still trying to process the fact that her mom had turned their family into a dumpster fire and didn't seem to care. And then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bomb of her own. She broke up with Brad. It happened one quiet night while we were watching an old movie. She muted the TV, looked over at me and said, Dad, I broke up with him. I didn't say anything right away, just waited. She looked down, fiddled with her bracelet. You were right. He wasn't good for me. I didn't rub it in. Didn't say, I told you so. I just nodded and said, "Proud of you." And I was. But as the divorce wore on, Diana got meaner. When she realized her legal tricks weren't working, she switched tactics. Tried to play the victim. Started telling friends and family I'd emotionally abandoned her. That I wasn't the same man after the injury. That I'd left her long before she left me. I ignored most of it. People believe what they want to believe. But when she said that to Dallas, that crossed the line. I don't know exactly what was said. All I know is that Dallas showed up at my place 2 days later with a duffel bag and tears in her eyes. "She blamed you for everything," she said. "Like you got hurt on purpose. Like you wanted her to cheat." She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw her as the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. I told her if she didn't stop, she might lose me too. I swallowed hard. Did she listen? Dallas shook her head. She never listens. That was the final push. Diana knew she was about to lose more than just her husband. She was about to lose her daughter. And when she realized that, she finally dropped the act. Stopped fighting the paperwork. Stopped pushing back. Signed the agreement. I gave her what the court would have anyway, some alimony, a fair share of the assets. But I kept my peace. And my self-respect. We sold the house. She moved into a rental not far from her job. I kept the apartment I'd moved into after leaving. Dallas split her time between us at first. But the cracks were permanent now. Diana kept blaming me for the divorce, even after all that. And one night, when Dallas heard her say, "If he had just been more understanding," she snapped. "You ever think about Dad, Mom?" She didn't wait for a reply. She packed a bag and left. And from that day forward, she never stayed at her mother's place again. Divorce has a way of stripping everything down to the studs. Your routines, your self-image, your silence. It all gets exposed. After everything was finalized, I had a strange sense of stillness. No more lawyers. No more standoffs in the kitchen. No more pretending my wife loved me. Just me, a one-bedroom apartment, and a daughter who still dropped by with groceries and sarcasm. That silence, it was finally real. I didn't rush to fill the space. No dating apps. No desperate rebounds. I was done being a husband for now. I needed to figure out who I was without the ring. I kept seeing my therapist. Not for damage control anymore, just to talk. To clean out the mental junk drawer. You'd be amazed how much resentment you can store behind a polite smile. And then, something strange started happening. One morning, I woke up with morning wood. I know that sounds dumb to mention, but when you've spent over a year feeling like your body betrayed you, little things like that hit differently. I didn't tell anyone, not even Dallas. I waited, tracked it. A few days later, it happened again. And then again. A quiet little comeback. After a few months, it wasn't just mornings. Random moments during the day. My body, which had gone dark on me after the accident, was coming back online. And no, I didn't run back to Diana and wave it in her face. She didn't deserve to know. She'd made her choice when she climbed into someone else's bed. This new chapter was mine. Alone. 6 months after the divorce, I went out for the first time. Really out. Friday night. Midlife crowd. Music that didn't make my ears bleed. I wasn't there to meet anyone. I just wanted to blend into a space that wasn't mine or hers. I sat at the bar. Ordered a rum and coke. Watched people dance like the world hadn't betrayed them yet. That's when I saw her. She was sitting at the end of the bar, sipping wine, wearing a black dress that didn't scream for attention, but earned it anyway. There was something familiar about her. I looked closer, and then it hit me. Dr. Lassiter, the hospital shrink. The one who sat with my wife, heard her justifications, and still treated me like I mattered when it all came out. She looked different in normal clothes. Softer. Real. I walked over. "Dr. Lassiter?" She turned, brows raised. "You've got me at a disadvantage," she said, teasing. I smiled. "Martin Miller. You saw my wife after the accident." The recognition clicked in. Her smile shifted. "Oh, that story." We talked. Not about the past. Just music. Work. The weirdness of seeing someone from a traumatic chapter in a bar, not a hospital hallway. She asked if I was dating anyone. I said no. Then I asked her. I'm trying, she said. But most guys either want a therapist or a project. I'm not in the mood to fix anyone. I laughed. Then tonight, maybe we both get a night off. We danced. We laughed. We let the music carry us. And when the slow song came on, she didn't let go. When the night ended, she looked at me and said, I'm lonely, Martin, but I don't do games. You interested in something real? Or just a night? I didn't answer with words. I reached for her hand. She came home with me, and in the morning, when she made breakfast in my t-shirt, she looked at me over coffee and asked, Didn't you have an injury? I nodded slowly. Then how? I smiled. Let's just say the tree fixed more than it broke. She grinned. Well then, lucky me. Vicky and I didn't start as some great love story. We started as two people with history, just not with each other. She knew my worst day. I knew her as the calm voice on the other side of it. But after that night, things changed. She stayed the weekend. Then she stayed the week. By month 2, she had a toothbrush in my bathroom and a drawer in my dresser. I didn't call it a relationship, but every night she stayed over and every morning we had breakfast. My apartment felt less like a shelter and more like a home. Dallas met her on a random Tuesday. She came over for dinner and walked in mid-laugh as Vicky was burning garlic bread. I expected tension, but Dallas surprised me. Dad, please tell me she's not a therapist. Vicky smirked. Technically, yes. Dallas rolled her eyes. Figures. But by the end of the meal, they were trading sarcastic jabs like old friends. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. But peace has a funny way of making you forget how loud the past can get. One Friday night, Vicky and I went out. Different bar. Same kind of vibe. Adults who've lived enough life to appreciate quiet music and overpriced cocktails. We found a table. Ordered drinks. Laughed about something stupid on the menu. And that's when it happened. Vicky froze mid-sip. Her eyes locked on someone behind me. Then I saw it in her face, recognition. And something else. I turned around. And there she was. Diana. She hadn't changed much. Hair still dyed too dark. Makeup like she was auditioning for attention. But the look on her face? That was new. Smug. Like she'd walked in just to be seen. She spotted me, smiled, and made a beeline for our table. Marty, she said, dragging out the name like she owned it. I nodded. Diana. She turned to Vicky. And you must be the replacement. Vicky didn't flinch. Nice to meet you. I've heard. Enough. Diana smiled wider. Funny. I haven't heard anything at all about you. I was about to say something, anything, to steer this away from turning ugly. But Diana wasn't done. I just thought she should know, she said sweetly. Why we divorced. You know, the whole inability issue. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't smart. It was a last-ditch missile fired from a sinking ship. I waited for Vicky to respond. She blinked once, took a slow sip of her wine, then said, Oh, that's good to know. Because whatever I was bouncing on last night sure didn't feel inability to me. Boom. Diana blinked. Her jaw twitched. She tried to recover. Wait. It works now? I turned to her. Yeah. Turns out it just needed time. If you'd stuck around, like vows are supposed to mean, you'd have known that. Her smile evaporated. The smugness drained from her face like someone pulled the plug. I expected her to fire back. But she didn't. She stood there, quiet for once, like a woman who just realized the door she slammed shut didn't lock behind her. Then, out of nowhere, she said, I'm sorry. She looked straight at me. I was selfish. I know that now. I should have waited. I should have stayed. I messed up something good. I didn't say anything. Not because I hadn't rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times, but because I didn't need it anymore. I had peace. And Diana? She had regrets. She turned and walked out of the bar. Vicky and I sat in silence for a moment. Then she raised her glass. To soft landings. I clinked mine against hers. And hard lessons. We didn't talk about Diana again that night. She was part of the past. And finally, she knew it too. After that night at the bar, something changed between Vicky and me. It wasn't just about the chemistry anymore. It was about the calm, the comfort, the fact that we could go through a moment like that. Diana showing up like a ghost in heels and come out the other side without cracks forming. She didn't get jealous. I didn't get rattled. We just handled it. And when you've lived through the kind of emotional chaos I had, that kind of steadiness felt like a miracle. 2 weeks later, I asked her a question. Not the question. Not yet. Just one to test the waters. You ever think about starting over? I said casually as we cleaned up dinner. She raised an eyebrow. Like, relationship-wise or professionally? Life, love, all of it. She rinsed a plate, set it down, and leaned on the counter. I used to think about what I lost, she said. Now I think about what I have. She turned to me. Is this where you tell me you bought a ring? I laughed. Not yet. But I did buy groceries, and I know your favorite coffee now. She smiled. Dangerous man. We didn't rush things. I still had scars. She had hers too. One night, as we sat on the couch watching something forgettable, she finally opened up more. My ex left me for someone who could give him kids, she said. I nodded. I already knew the headline, but not the full story. He didn't want to adopt. Said it wouldn't be the same. Like biology was more important than loyalty. I stayed quiet. Let her speak. I felt defective, she admitted. Less of a woman. For a long time, I thought, maybe I was. I looked at her. The strong, funny, intelligent woman who made my house feel like home, and all I could think was how wrong that man had been. You're not less of anything, I said. She looked away. It took a long time to believe that. We were two people carrying bags we didn't pack, but decided to stop dragging them around. We started spending every night together. Not because we had to, because we wanted to. Dallas noticed the change too. She came over one weekend, took one look at the place. Cleaner, cozier, full of laughter, and said, Okay, who are you and what have you done with my dad? I told her I was happy. She gave me a look I hadn't seen from her in years. Not pity, not confusion, just relief. Then, one afternoon, Vicky and I were at a quiet cafe. She leaned in and said, I've been thinking about something. Yeah. I don't want to keep doing the your place, my place thing. You want to move in? She nodded. If you're ready. I didn't hesitate. Let's do it. We spent the next month slowly merging lives. Her books on my shelves. Her throw pillows on my couch. Her weird herbal teas in my cabinet. Every little thing made the apartment feel less temporary. Less like a stopgap and more like a future. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, I found a note on my coffee mug. It said, This is what rebuilding looks like. Don't forget how far you've come. V. And I stood there for a second, holding that note, realizing she was right. I wasn't the man who sat in a hospital hallway crying while a nurse told him his wife didn't want to see him. I wasn't the guy begging for scraps of attention in his own marriage. I was someone new, someone building forward, and this time with the right person. It had been almost a year since the divorce. A year since Diana walked out the door still convinced she'd done nothing wrong. Since the custody battle that never was. Since Bill disappeared on her. Since Dallas moved in with me. For good. And in all that time, Diana and I had barely spoken. No texts. No calls. No sudden late night, I miss you messages. It was like we were strangers who happened to share a history. And that was fine with me. Until she asked to see me. It started with a text. Can we talk? Just once. In person. Nothing dramatic. I stared at it for a while. I even showed it to Vicky. You going? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. She nodded. Then go. Sometimes closure's a door you open yourself. So I agreed. We met at a coffee shop halfway between her apartment and mine. Neutral ground. She looked tired. Not physically, just emotionally stretched thin. We sat outside. She ordered tea. I got black coffee. We didn't hug. Didn't even shake hands. Just two people who used to be everything. Now nothing. I'm not here to reopen anything, she said quickly. I'm not trying to win you back. Good, I replied. She winced a little, but kept going. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For real this time. No sarcasm. No excuses. I didn't say anything. Just waited. I hurt you, she said. I know that. And I blamed you for things that weren't your fault. I raised an eyebrow. You think that now? She nodded. Dallas told me some things. About how you were after the accident. What you were dealing with. She paused. I didn't want to see it. It was easier to pretend you shut me out than admit I abandoned you. It was probably the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. And maybe 2 years earlier it would have cracked something open in me. But not now. Now it felt like a confession made to an old photograph. Meaningful but too late. She looked at me for a long time. I'm not expecting forgiveness, she said. That's good, I answered. Because I already gave it. Just not out loud. That surprised her. Then why meet me? Because we shared a daughter, I said. And 20 years. I didn't want to hate you forever. She blinked. Do you still hate you? I thought about it. No, I just don't trust you. And I never will. She nodded slowly, took a sip of her tea, set it down. You're with someone now. It wasn't a question. Yeah. She makes you happy? I smiled. She makes me better. That was all I needed to say. Diana looked down at her hands. I hope I find that someday. I didn't respond. We sat in silence for another minute. Then she stood. Take care of yourself, Martin. You too. And just like that, she walked away. No tears. No drama. Just a final goodbye disguised as small talk. I sat there a little longer. Not sad. Not relieved. Just settled. Like a weight had finally been put down and left behind. When I got home, Vicky was on the couch reading. She looked up. How'd it go? I kissed her forehead. It's over. She smiled. It was already over. You just needed to hear it out loud. She was right. Sometimes closure doesn't. It just lets it stay closed. Life didn't magically fix itself after that last conversation with Diana. There wasn't some triumphant montage of me smiling while moving boxes and high-fiving my daughter. No inspirational soundtrack. Just real life. Laundry. Work. Cooking dinner with Vicky. Picking up Dallas after late classes. Paying bills. But something was different now. The heaviness was gone. The part of me that used to flinch every time my phone buzzed? The part that replayed the night of the accident in my head over and over? Gone. I had space in my mind again. Space to think. To breathe. To laugh. Dallas started smiling more too. Not in the performative, I'm fine kind of way. Real smiles. She'd started seeing a counselor on her own. Said she needed to talk through what happened with her mom, with the whole bill situation. I didn't push. I just paid for the sessions and picked her up when she didn't feel like driving. One day she got in the car, dropped her bag in the back seat and said, You know, I used to think cheating wasn't a big deal. I didn't say anything. She continued, But it wrecks stuff. Even stuff you didn't know could break. I just nodded. She already knew everything she needed to know. That fall, she applied for a transfer to a university in another city. Far enough to live her own life. Close enough to come home when she wanted. I helped her pack. Took her out for pizza before the drive. She looked across the table at me and said, You're different now. How so? You're lighter. Like someone took a backpack full of bricks off you. I smiled. Maybe they did. She gave me a look. I'm glad Vicky's around. You two work. Yeah, I said. We really do. Vicky was never the stepmom type, and Dallas didn't need one. But they had their own rhythm. They'd cook together, sometimes just to roast each other's taste in music. They had inside jokes I wasn't part of. And I loved that, because it meant we weren't 3 people surviving something anymore. We were 3 people building something. One night, I was sitting on the balcony with Vicky, just sipping wine, listening to the city. She looked over at me. You ever think about how this all worked out? All the time. Do you miss it? The old life. I took a beat before answering. I missed the man I thought I was. The marriage I thought I had. She nodded. Yeah, that makes sense. But no, I said. I don't miss living in a lie. We sat there in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that says, we don't need to fill every second with noise. The kind that only comes with peace. I took her hand. You regret anything? I asked. She squeezed my fingers gently. Not meeting you sooner. There's no clean ending to a story like this. No perfect redemption arc. No Instagrammable quote to sum it all up. But there is this. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is let go of what nearly destroyed you. And sometimes, on the other side of that, is everything you. About a year and a half after the divorce was finalized, life had stabilized. I never thought that would feel like a victory. No drama. No surprise texts. No tension in the chest every time I turned into my driveway. Just routines. Calm ones. I'd wake up next to Vicky, make coffee, feed her cat who barely tolerated me, drive to work, listen to music that didn't make me sad anymore. Healing doesn't announce itself. It just sneaks in, quiet, like fresh air in a room you forgot was stuffy. Dallas was thriving at school. She came home for long weekends now and then, sometimes with a trunk full of laundry, sometimes just to eat real food. She and Vicky got along better than I could have ever hoped. And me? I wasn't just functioning. I was good. I didn't feel like I was constantly proving I was okay anymore. I was okay. One evening, Vicky came home later than usual. She dropped her bag on the counter and stood there, like she was waiting for a reaction. Everything all right? I asked. I had dinner with a friend, she said. Just catching up. Good, I said. You deserve that. She stared at me for a second, then smiled. A year ago, you would have asked 20 questions. I shrugged. Yeah. And a year ago, I wouldn't have believed the answers. She walked over, kissed my cheek. You've grown, Martin. But growth gets tested. And mine was tested 2 weeks later. Dallas called me one night. Not crying. Not frantic. Just off. Dad? She said. I ran into Mom. I paused. Where? Target. Totally random. What did she say? She tried to act normal. Asked how I was. Talked about holidays. Holidays? Yeah. Like she assumed we'd all play Happy Family again. I stayed quiet. Dallas continued. I didn't say anything rude. I just said I had plans. But Dad. It was weird. Later that night, I told Vicky. I think Diana's testing the waters, I said, trying to ease her way back into our lives. She won't get far, Vicky replied. I believed her. But still, it got under my skin. Not because I thought Diana had power over me anymore, but because she still didn't get it. She still thought this was about an affair. Like all she did was make a mistake that needed time to heal from. But it wasn't a wound. It was an amputation. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Not from a lawyer. Just handwritten, no return address, in her familiar handwriting. It said, I've made peace with the past. I hope someday you'll let me be part of your future. Not for me, but for Dallas. Take care. D. I read it once. Then I folded it in half and put it in a drawer I don't open anymore. Some doors stay shut for a reason. Vicky didn't ask about it. I think she knew without me saying anything. She never pushed. That's the difference between the person who breaks you and the one who helps you rebuild. That weekend, Dallas came home again. She sat with me on the porch, watching the light fade. Mom's lonely, she said. Not apologetically, just factually. I know, I replied. She thinks you'll let her back in eventually. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, that part of me doesn't exist anymore. Dallas nodded. That's what I told her. We sat quietly for a while. Then she smiled. You know, I used to feel bad about everything. About helping her. About not telling you. You were a kid, I said. You were trying to protect your mom. Still, I see what you went through now. And I'm sorry. I looked at her. My daughter. older, wiser, still growing. I forgive you, Del. I always did. She wiped her eyes. Even before I knew I needed it? Especially then. That night, I slept harder than I had in months. Not because something ended, but because something settled. I hadn't just survived. I had arrived at something whole. And this time, no one was taking it from me. It's strange how the mind keeps old pain in storage. Quiet, boxed up. You don't notice it until something small cracks the lid. For me, that crack came on a Wednesday, doing something ordinary. Cleaning out the hall closet. There it was. A dusty box labeled wedding stuff. I hadn't opened it since I moved out of the house. Inside were faded pictures, a guest list, old champagne corks, a pressed flower from Diana's bouquet. Felt like looking through someone else's life. Like watching strangers who didn't know the storm coming. I almost threw the whole thing away, but something stopped me. Not because I wanted to keep the memories, because I wanted to face them one last time on my terms. That night, I burned a few of the notes and pictures in the fireplace. Let them turn to ash. Vicky sat beside me. She didn't ask questions. Just handed me another page when I was ready. She knew what this was. Not erasing the past. Just deciding which parts no longer deserved shelf space. Later, as we sat by the fire, Vicky leaned into me. "You ever think about doing it again?" she asked. I turned to her. "Getting married?" She nodded. Quiet. "I used to think no," I said. "Not after everything. But lately," she smiled. "Same." I took a breath. "I don't need a ceremony," I said. "Or rings. But I want you to know you're it. There's no plan B. There's no one else after this." Vicky's eyes softened. That's all I needed to hear. The next day, I didn't buy a diamond. I bought a small silver band. Simple. Real. Nothing to prove. I came home, made her favorite dinner, dimmed the lights. No audience. No big speech. Just us. When I handed her the ring, I said, "This is for every night you stayed. For every word you didn't force out of me. For every time you saw the worst and didn't flinch." She didn't cry. She just took my hand and said, "Then let's keep doing this. Forever." Dallas was the first person we told. She cried, then hugged us both so hard I couldn't breathe. "You guys make sense," she said. "You're what it looks like when people grow instead of break." That hit deep. A week later, I ran into an old coworker. He asked how I was doing. I told him the truth. Better than I ever was during the perfect marriage years. He looked surprised. "You sound like someone who figured it out." I smiled. "No, I just stopped lying to myself." That weekend, I finally did something I'd been meaning to for months. I updated my will. It wasn't dramatic, just practical. I left what I could to Dallas. The rest I left to Vicky. Not for money, for meaning, for the people who actually showed up when it counted. Later that night, as I watched Vicky reading on the couch, glasses on, wrapped in a blanket that used to be mine but somehow became hers, I realized something. This wasn't starting over. This was simply starting real. I never imagined my story would end with a second chapter that felt better than the first. And I don't mean perfect. Nothing's perfect. But real? Yeah. And I'd take real over perfect any day of the week. The wedding was exactly how we wanted it. Small. Quiet. Just a few people in the backyard of a friend's house. Dallas stood between us, my daughter, my anchor, and read something she'd written. She didn't cry. I did. She said, "This isn't a wedding about fixing something broken. This is two people building something solid. From the ground up. With no lies in the foundation." That moment, that was everything. A few months later, Diana sent a card. No drama. No guilt trip. Just a short note. "Congrats. I hope you found what we both couldn't handle the first time around." I didn't reply. Not out of spite. But because there wasn't anything left to say. She was part of the past. A chapter with a hard ending. I didn't need to tear it out of the book. I just didn't need to reread it anymore. Dallas graduated later that year. Vicky and I sat side by side in the crowd, watching her walk across the stage. My chest felt full in a way it hadn't in a long, long time. Not from pride alone, but from something deeper, like I'd actually made it through the fire, and didn't come out bitter, just scarred and wiser. After the ceremony, Dallas found us. She hugged me first, then Vicky. "Promise me something," she said. "What's that?" "Don't ever stop being this version of you. The one who knows his worth. Who doesn't settle." I nodded. "Deal. But only if you do the same." She smiled. "Fair trade." That night, I sat alone for a minute on the porch. Vicky was inside folding laundry. Dallas was already packing for a short trip with friends. And I just sat. No sound but the wind and the quiet hum of peace. This story started with betrayal. With sirens and silence and questions I didn't want the answers to. It ran through broken promises, ugly truths, and a version of myself I barely recognize anymore. But it ends here. With love. With peace. With a life that isn't perfect, but feels like mine. So if you're wondering how you survive something like this, here's my advice. Let go of what hollowed you. Hold on to who stood beside you in the dark. And never ever build your identity around being the one they left. You're more than that. You always were. It just takes losing everything to finally see it.